I'm going to talk about servicing the fill valve on a Goldstar SE and the other models of BSAs that have the pressure gauge on the end of the air cylinder. The first thing you want to do is make sure that the rifle is completely empty of air. You can do this by dry firing it until there is no air left coming out of the barrel. You could also do it by loosening off the pressure gauge on the front, but obviously you need to be careful when doing this because the gauge can shoot out if you go too far. The cover gets pulled off the gauge. It should just be a sort of a friction fit. You can then get a tool that's roughly the same size as the fill probe to put into the fill port, which can then be used to slacken off the pressure gauge body. Once that's been done, you should be able to undo it by hand. If there was air pressure in the rifle, you wouldn't be able to do this because the air pressure would just lock the gauge body solid into the air cylinder. That's the gauge unit. There is a little lock ring on it, which I explain in the later on in the video how to adjust it to get your fill port hole to the position you'd like it to be. Right, now you want to get a tool of some description, a screwdriver, a pin punch, whatever else you have handy. That's roughly the same size as the cross pin that I'm showing in the video. Then push the pin out. It's just a slack fit, it's not threaded or screwed or glued or anything else. Hold your finger over the end of the fill valve because there is a spring and a washer in there which will ping out if you don't. Remove them, making a note of the order. That's a plastic valve seat. It's not like the other BSA models which use an O-ring. This one's very similar to the S200 firing valve. You could just clean that and make sure it's all, has no dirt or anything in it, and put it back in, or you can strip the gauge body down completely, which I'll show you how to do in a second. Just tap the body on something, and then a brass sleeve will fall out. There is an O-ring on it, just make sure the O-ring's in good condition, and then that's a little sintered bronze filter or sieve, which is meant to sieve out any rubbish that comes in through the fill probe. Make sure that's all nice and clean. If you've got a compressor, blow out the little filter just to make sure that there's no dirt stuck in it. Clean the inside of the gauge body and make sure that it's all clean, no burrs or dust or fibers. Drop the little sintered bronze filter back in, make sure it's seated properly. Like I said earlier, make sure the O-ring's in good condition on this sleeve. Make sure there's no dirt or anything else on it. Drop it in, and then give it a little squeeze just to get the O-ring seated. Then you need to put the fill valve back in. Just make sure it's clean and tidy. And then there are two sides to it. There's a small side which is the bit that does the sealing, and then there's the bigger side which has is basically a spring guide. So make sure that that's in the right way around. Drop the spring in, and then the washer goes on top just to hold it all in place. As you can see, there's a fair bit of preload on the spring. Right, then you want to push the pin back in. You'll need to push the washer down to compress the spring so that the pin can go over the top of them. Push it in sort of halfway or so, and then take your finger out the way and then push, just hold the washer down and then push the pin the rest of the way home. As I said before, these aren't glued in or screwed in. They basically don't fall out because when they're screwed in, the cylinder holds them in place. Check the O-ring, make sure it's all sealed. You could always put a drop of something like Abbey SM50 on the O-ring and on the threads. Now you can screw the body back into the air cylinder. Right, you'll notice that when you screw it back in, the fill port may not be where you want it to be. There is no right or wrong place for this. It's just that some people prefer the probe to be vertical, some prefer it to be horizontal, some people like it at an angle, some people don't care. It is adjustable, and to adjust it you use the whatever you use to loosen the probe. I'm going to show you this one. It's almost vertical, but it's not quite, it's slightly off, so slacken it off and then tighten up the lock ring, which will then allow the gauge body to screw on a little bit further. The lock ring's just got an O-ring under it just to keep it tight. Do that, get it lined up to where you're happy, hang on to the probe, and then tighten up the lock ring, which will lock it in that position. You don't need to worry too much about this, because once there's air in the rifle, the gauge body won't move anyway. It's only when there's no air in the cylinder that the actual gauge body can move. Make sure the cover's clean and hasn't got any dirt or bits and bobs in it. Push it back on, rotate it round, and then fill the rifle as you normally would.